Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Appreciate the opportunity. And again, I thank all the witnesses for being here. At the beginning of the hearing, I heard that we should talk about real-world impacts, and the SEC should be worried about real-world impacts and not theoretical stuff. I agree with that. How many of you believe in climate change? If you could raise your hand. Okay, so did everyone raise their hand? Yes. Okay, so that's a real-world impact then? I would say it is. I mean, if you all believe in it, I certainly do. Yesterday, the Republican chairman of the Texas State Board of Education pulled $8.5 billion in investment from BlackRock. For years, BlackRock has outperformed the market and provided positive returns for the Texas Permanent School Fund, a fund specifically created to support the state's public schools. However, because of my good friends on the other side's anti-ESG dogma, culture war politics have been prioritized over the well-being of constituents. And unfortunately, this is not an isolated incident, but a trend. A recent study by the Texas Association of Business Chamber of Commerce Foundation found that Republican anti-ESG laws have cost Texas taxpayers an average of $270 million a year in debt-related costs since the measure took effect in 2021. Thankfully, the Securities and Exchange Commission has decided to put people over politics and to listen to investors. Earlier this month, as we've been noting, the SEC and the Securities Exchange Commission adopted rules to enhance and standardize climate-related disclosures by public companies. These long-awaited rules require companies to disclose information about climate risks that have materially impacted their businesses, operations, and strategy. Additionally, companies must disclose costs, expenditures, and losses incurred because of severe weather events, such as wildfires and flooding, which drastically impacted my constituents in San Diego, which we would have never thought would happen. A 1,000-year flood in San Diego would happen. We know that climate risk is a financial risk. I applaud the SEC for considering feedback from investors, businesses, and academics, industry experts, and Congress. A recent Morgan Stanley Institute for Sustainable Investment reports and reflects that over 75% of individual investors believe that corporations should address environmental impacts and plan to make sustainable investments based on those decisions. You know, I agree, Mr. Norton, what you said earlier. You know, information is what makes capitalism work. This is information that I think is one material, but investors want it. Am I wrong about that? You were talking about that earlier. I mean, isn't this what investors want these days? Oh,
absolutely. It has a profound impact potentially on companies.
Why is this profound impact? Why?
Well, for two reasons. One, the physical risks of climate change. We now know that these billion-dollar disasters are increasing. There's coastal flooding, and more is expected in the next, 5 to 10 years. So there's that. Companies that have operations in those areas are at risk and need to make a plan, and investors need to know that they have a plan. But there are also transition risks because there are all kinds of states changing laws and creating laws that they hope to protect.
And there are even states where you can't even seem to get insurance these days because the insurance companies take a look at these risks and say, that's not a good risk for us, we're not going to insure it, we can't get the right price. I mean, that's what's happening now. I do want to talk the last minute and a half I have about cost-benefit analysis. I do think that it's important to look at the cost of something, but how do you measure discrimination against women? What's the cost? And especially, let's say a mother who is discriminated against because she's a woman, what is the cost to her daughters that are watching that? How do you measure that? Sorry, how do you measure that?
You're absolutely right. I mean, it's difficult to measure many of the benefits of rules that are done that help people like that, and difficult to measure many of the costs. But the whole point of the cost-benefit analysis is not to get in an absolute perfect answer, but rather to weigh things and get more information. And the honest truth is that the SEC actually needs more high-level economists to be able to really do what folks on the other side want them to do on cost-benefit analysis, so they need a better budget, a bigger budget.
And that's why I'm not against taking a look at the cost of things, but I guess you have to look at it holistically because some of these things lead to really awful conclusions when you take a look at the cost of something. Discrimination. You can say, well, that's not much of a cost. We just get somebody else to do it. It doesn't have to be a woman. Well, no, you discriminated against her because she's a woman. That's not right. But anyway, with that, I've got 7 seconds. I will yield back, and thank you.
Gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Muser, for 5 minutes.